unions have structure, administration, membership. It actually is a big business as you go through. Let's talk about the business of being a union as you go through. There is a giant union. It's called the AFL-CIO. It's not a labor union. We call it an umbrella union as you go through. In essence, many unions are part of it. So they form an umbrella and they act on a national basis as you go through. Yes, they're a political actor, which actually aggravates a lot of people because they typically only really lobby in one political party of our two-party system as you go through, to great frustration as you go through. They have a footprint in the other political party, but not much as you go through. They represent labor's interest in public policy issues such as civil rights, economics, safety, occupational health, and you really have to sit down and have your head in the sands and not realize that historically, the unions have done a lot of things to improve the overall life of the average worker in the United States, even if they haven't formally paid dues in the process. And I mentioned this before about the 40-hour work week, no child labor. They sit down and they define different aspects. They really have helped with the aspect of workplace safety as well. So there's been a lot of huge positive things as you go through. So they provide information to unions. Here's kind of an org chart as you go through. By the time it's all done, there's over 50 different unions that are involved. They have a huge number of members of 12.75 million at the time of this recording as you go through. Then they have 51 state federations that are out there. Local unions, this really is where the work is done for the worker. The national aspect, the AFL-CIO, really is a political actor, and they lobby on behalf of their members' unions on a national basis, and they have a huge impact in the national politics of Washington, D.C. as you go through. The local ones, they deal with the negotiation, the administration, day-to-day interaction as you go through. They may be in one single facility. You may have a company that has 17 facilities. You may even have just one of the 17 be unionized and the other 16 not as you go through, or maybe all of them are, just depends as you go through. The different kinds of membership, they elect officials. Surprisingly, one of the most powerful officials is often what we call the shop steward. It may not even be a shop. It could be a white collar union as you go through, but the steward, the shop steward as you go through, is the one that holds the hand, so to speak. Hopefully not literally, but they actually help the employees as they go through on their concerns about potential grievances, their bosses bothering them. They represent that person in the different conferences. The shop steward is a very powerful position, in many ways more powerful than the president and the other officers as you go through. Unions, depending upon their size, they may actually pay somebody full time to go take care of a cadre of different groups they have. We call that a business representative, and they carry a lot of clout, but usually they represent the union, but when it comes down to employee, it's usually the shop steward as you go through. Some of the different aspects as you go through, union security is a big thing. There's different aspects of a closed shop, a union shop, an agency shop. A lot of times, the aspect of membership is if you're an employee and you work in this department, you must become a union member as you go through. There's also a new law that came out in 2018, and it was really based upon a Supreme Court decision as you go through that really has had a huge impact as you go through on a closed shop. But make sure you know the concept of if you are in an organization, a part of a group, they may require you to sit down and join a union as you go through, or sit down there and pay agency fees or not, depending upon if you choose to do that as you go through, because they will lobby for you in the process. A lot of times, if you don't want to have a union and you're the employer, you can do different things to have dialogues with the employees through the human resource management department. It just depends on the culture of your organization as you go through. I've done both successfully, but most of HRM, really a lot of it involves with conflict resolution, whether you have a union or not as you go through. So if you want to have a really strong company and don't want a union, have lots of dialogue, talk with the employees as you go through, have some formal dialogues sitting aside with them. There's a whole series of books out there as to how to go about doing that. Also, unions provide workers' right of protection beyond those specified by law. You can do the same thing with a good, solid HR department as you go through. Worker views, there's a downtrend in union membership. You can see the numbers. You saw the graphs in there. The interest in unions is so substantial because a lot of unions, they make more money for the workers than the other people do without a union as you go through. So from that, you have a lot of aspects of that, but there's been a long history of raw corruption with unions, and this depends on the union as you go through. Recently, as 5 years ago, there was a major scandal involving that, and then 5 years from now, there'll be some more as you go through. You'll see the corruption has been in the ranks too often in union leadership, which is unfortunate. You also have a lot of what we call right to work laws in southern states, where you don't have to be part of a union no matter what happens, just because they say you have to. No, my state law says I don't have to as you go through. Here is the law you must know for this class, National Labor Relations Act, as you go through. It's a huge law passed way back in 1935. It really, by slang, it's normally referred to as the Wagner Act, but now it seems like the National Labor Relations Act, which created the National Labor Relations Board, is more involved in the news probably than it should be as you go through, but they're meddling a lot by making changes based upon political consequences and supporting different aspects of it. There's a whole series of people that are excluded. Really, most of it, as you're on the coverage of NLRA, if you're a supervisor, that is the big bulk of people as you go through, employed by a parent or spouse. Hopefully you don't form a union to get your mom or your dad or your husband or your wife as you go through. You're employed as an independent contractor. There's a 19 bullet point checklist with the IRS you have to cope with on what is that versus an employee. Domestic service in the home and agricultural labor, they have a different group of laws as you go through. Employed by the Railway Labor Act, or you're employed by the federal, state, or local government as you go through, or there's a whole series. This is your shopping list as you go through. But the biggest thing about the NLRA is the unfair labor practices, which really prohibits the employer from being involved in interfering with employee rights in regards to unions as you go through. A couple more things. The biggest thing, the takeaway here is the NLRB. They enforce it based upon the Commerce Clause in the Constitution. If you want to sit down and go check that out, that's an important aspect. But that being said, they really, a major part they do in everyday life is they conduct and certify representative elections. We'll talk more about that as you go through. But the NLRB, National Labor Relations Board, is very much involved with union activity, especially in the last decade as you go through. So know what the AFL-CIO, it's a giant umbrella union. The union is interested in self-survival, but isn't everybody as you go through? Isn't every organization interested in self-survival? Know about closed shop, union shop, agency shop, and know that the NLRB, National Labor Relations Board, it's a federal agency that really handles union activity on a national basis, and then also down on the individual basis as well. Take care.